So today I want to talk about the most overlooked thing when it comes to finding the right partner for yourself. There are so many things that we think are important, and most people fail to miss this one thing, and it's a really big deal. So you'll want to find out what that is, and you'll want to know exactly what you can do so that you can find these things out earlier in people and you don't have to waste so much time. If you're new here, I'm Ketra Thompson, and what I do with my clients is I help them change from the inside out, because our subconscious mind is running over 95% of everything we think, feel, and do, but we don't have access to it typically. And so what I do is I help my clients reframe those subconscious beliefs that are holding them back so that we can all love and appreciate each other in a more authentic way, so that we can stop letting the old patterns, the old belief systems, and the old triggered responses stop us from having a really fulfilling connection. So if you'd like to learn more about that, you can check out the link in the description below, where you can set up a completely complimentary consultation call so you and I can chat. We can get to the heart of what's going on for you, and I can make my best recommendation, because so many people out there are offering sort of a one-size-fits-all process. And the reality is we're all very complicated human beings with our own stories and our own trauma, and we really do need our own custom work. So you can learn more there. And I also want to mention, in my heart of hearts, I really believe that the work that I do with people is creating huge transformation. So in order for me to reach more people, I would really appreciate it if you would click like and subscribe so you can be notified every time that I post a new video, but also so that other people become more aware as well, because that's the way it works on here. So when it comes to finding a relationship that's a really good fit for you, there's a few things that have to be in place. And when these aren't in place and we're trying to kind of force it, it's not a good idea. So the things that we know that we need to have in place that are kind of the obvious things is attraction. That's important. Also, respect and curiosity. We want to be able to respect that person and have some intrigue, and we want to know more, and we want them to be able to respect us as well. We also want to have sort of a similar life view or worldview, so that we're not completely at odds in the way that we see things, in the way that we view humanity, in our levels of compassion. And we also want to have sort of these pairings, and I think Matthew Hussey sort of mentions this a lot, the unique pairing. And it really is true, where you can have both ease in quiet time and also lots of depth in conversation. You can have a playfulness, but you also have some confidence that is coming through in that person. And then you can have that confidence, but you also have a humility or a humbleness. And so the unique pairings make someone more dynamic. They make someone more human and not just this rigid sort of prescription that's fit into a box. And we realize, oh, this person isn't just confident and self-assured. They're also quite humble, and they also are really empathetic and kind. And so these unique pairings create sort of that spark where our heart says, oh, this is the one. And so if we look at things on paper, like everything that could check a box, like an income level or looks or height or something, those are very superficial. But even on this level that feels more heart-centered, where we're like, oh, this is the person that I could spend my life with, there's oftentimes something that we're overlooking in that moment where we think this is the one. And we end up wasting our time trying to change these aspects in someone else. And what we actually need is someone who understands and holds space for our imperfections and us for theirs. So let's face it, we've all broken up with people or left people because we just couldn't handle some aspect of them. And they probably have broken up with us because they just couldn't connect to or handle some aspect of us. And what that is an indication that those other things that we thought were so great about that person didn't outweigh these annoyances, and we or the other person allowed those things to become bigger. And what usually happens is we're triggered by something in them. And because we're triggered, we make all these assumptions. And so what we really need is someone that has the ability to allow for us to have those needs. So let's say someone has a need for reassurance. Let's say they maybe are a little more anxiously attached, and maybe they've had a lot of letdown in their life. Maybe they've been abandoned several times. They need a partner who isn't going to shame them or blame them or throw those things in their face. They need a partner who understands that, okay, my partner needs consistency in this area so she or he can calm down in their nervous system, and they can know that I'm not going to judge them in this way, and I'm going to reassure them when they need it. And let's say there's someone who needs time alone, and, the other partner throws a fit about it, doesn't ask questions about it, doesn't try to understand more. And so there becomes an argument about it because they're triggered, instead of them being curious and going, oh, okay, you need some time alone. What does that look like for you? How much do you think you need? How can I support you in that? Now, all of a sudden, you're not afraid to express your need for some alone time because the other person is holding space for your imperfections, for your insecurities, for the things that you need so that you can feel okay and that you can feel safe. So in many cases, what I find is that we mistake these things for things we can fix. That if the other person is showing up in a way that really isn't emotionally safe for us, that we can fix it in them. And what I think is the biggest problem here is when we see a lot of good in someone else, we tend to overlook the dysfunction. Now, we're not going to be perfect. We need to have two people who are willing to hold space for the wounds of the other person. But what's required is not just holding space. What is required is if you have a partner willing to hold space for you or to learn more about you or to be curious about you, you have to also be curious about you and your patterns. You have to be self-reflective. You have to be willing to look at yourself. You have to be willing to communicate those things. And so if you have a partner that you're trying to hold space for and you're trying to be there for, you're trying to shine light in these areas that might be hurting you, and they are not willing to join you in that level of curiosity about themselves or you and you about yourself, that thing has to be mutual. That mutual ability to have curiosity about our own self, about our own patterns, about how we are being perceived in the relationship we're in. Because if you're the only one, then you can't force them to have that reality. And I see this a lot when you've got attachment styles like a dismissive avoidant who has a lot of amazing, wonderful qualities, but there is so much inner shame or unworthiness or I'm not enough or I'll never get it right or whatever that inner belief is, even if they're not aware of it, that causes them to always look for the fault in someone else. Then you're trying to change something in someone that they're not willing to look at in themselves. And this also happens in, narcissistic relationships where they will not look at themselves because the pain of looking at themselves is too much. And I'm not saying that can't happen with someone who's anxiously attached as well. An anxiously attached person might not realize how they're being perceived. They might not realize that there's not enough balance in the way that they show up with their partner. So they also have to be self-reflective. And if they always make it the other person's fault without having the self-reflection piece, that's a problem too. And so the things we often mistake that we think we can fix are that lack of curiosity. That other person isn't curious about themselves, about the way they're perceived by others, about the way they're making other people feel. They're not curious about you and your experience with them. And it's really an emotional wound. And they immediately think their internal narrative or belief system about why or what's going on is the only truth, and there's no curiosity. So they never challenge their assumptions about themselves or their assumptions about you. That's a big deal. Challenging assumptions means that you will step into curiosity. You cannot have curiosity without challenging your assumptions. Now, the next thing that we really get stuck in is when someone is annoyed with you without empathy. Now, that means their inner narrative is more important to them. And so instead of giving you the benefit of the doubt, They are locked on to their story about you, about what you meant when you said what you said, about the inner dialogue inside of you. There's this huge amount of assumption that's happening. And so if there's annoyance without empathy, that equals inner assumptions. And those assumptions about you cannot possibly be accurate. We are very multidimensional human beings. And so if they don't have the curiosity that we just talked about, where they're going to challenge their assumptions, then they're going to be annoyed. And that annoyance without empathy is where it's a problem. Now, every relationship has something that we're like kind of annoyed at. Like, oh, okay, yeah, I know that this is a thing for them. Like, okay, here we go. It'll be fine. We're going to get through this. That kind of annoyance is not without empathy. That kind of annoyance is, here we go again, okay, but it's not locked into the narrative that is keeping someone stuck. It's actually willingly acknowledging the annoyance and stepping into curiosity with empathy. Okay, this is something that someone I love is struggling with. Let's get curious here. So I want you to keep in mind that it's fine if there are people out there that can't deal with some aspect of you. And it's fine if there's people that have something that you can't deal with in them. What that means is they are not your person. You cannot go into a relationship where you feel like you have constantly got to fight to be seen or empathized with, or to fight for someone else's curiosity about you. Those are non-negotiables. The curiosity about yourself and the curiosity about the other person has to be present in both people. And so what you're going to find is that your person will have woundings, because none of us are perfect, and there are wounds that fit with yours, and a willingness to see the beauty in you, in your brokenness, and the beauty in themselves, in their brokenness. And they will not try to punish you for it. Because if they still think that their brokenness is awful and needs to be hidden and shameful, they will try to punish you for your brokenness. So that self-compassion is really big. They've got to be self-compassionate about themselves, which doesn't mean you let yourself off the hook. It means you know that you're human and that you're growing and that you're willing to step into vulnerability. And so do you. And so if that's not the case, they are just not your person. Don't try to fix it. Don't try to change it. You can't. It's hard enough to change yourself. You certainly can't change someone else. And especially when you're fighting subconscious programming. And so this is where hypnosis is such a powerful tool. This is where the hypnosis process gives you access to your subconscious mind. It helps you release those emotional wounds. It allows you to install new beliefs and new neural pathways that allow you to function more in your authenticity instead of these old protective functions that have been keeping you stuck in these patterns forever. And along with mind coaching and attachment style and relationship coaching that I use in combination to make this a very holistic process that allows for you to strengthen your emotional regulation. It really reinforces the changes that you want to make so that they can be permanent, so that you're not running in a circle, constantly fighting against your own old programming and triggers and making things big that don't need to be big. But what that boils down to is it either keeps you from being self-compassionate, curious, and willing to challenge your own beliefs and assumptions, or it keeps you focused outwardly on someone else, thinking that you can heal them, change them, or help them step into their own curiosity, their own healing, their own authenticity. And that's not the way that it works. We cannot do that for someone else, but we can do it for ourselves, especially when we have that deep subconscious reframing and healing work. So I want to give you some steps that you can take today, right now, that can help you get some clarity on this. So when we're looking for a partner to share our lives with, it's really important that we take into account the phase of life that we're in and what we are hoping to find in that phase of life, because it might be different. And of course, those first things I mentioned are important. So this is like the first thing to check off your list, is that you do have some attraction. You don't want to try to force attraction. It doesn't have to be over the top, but it does need to be existent, some physical attraction or some level of chemistry, because that's just not something you can force. You want to make sure that you respect this person. that you actually are curious about their worldview and what they think, and that they respect you as well. Of course, you want to have similar life views and worldviews, but that can really burn you because the day-to-day life that you live with someone happens in a million small, tiny moments that have nothing to do with those big views. Now, they are important. They can be deal breakers, but they are not what is going to get you through your day-to-day life. So it's great that they're there. But we also want to have the unique pairings that create an ease of conversation, a space where we can be ourselves, where we can let our guard down, where that person is both confident and humble, where there's playfulness and times of deep connection that isn't just brushed off into humor all the time, right? So there's both of those. So those unique pairings are what take the rest of that list and kind of make it like, oh, this is a person I could be with. But we can't stop there because you both have to believe that the good and attractive qualities in the other person outweigh the annoying ones. Because we're all going to have those annoying ones. The good has to outweigh that. Plus, the good has to be coupled with the ability to hold space, to be curious, and to allow each other to be imperfect. Knowing that the more consistency we have in that relationship, the more that part of that person that's afraid, fearful, scared of rejection, needing reassurance, needing understanding, those parts are going to calm down. And if they never calm down, if you constantly feel like, I don't know where I stand, I don't know how this person feels, I'm confused. Their actions say one thing, their words say another, maybe their actions are not consistent. That is not your person, because you need to have someone who's willing to be consistent enough about your needs, and you need to be able to show up for them consistently in those weak areas of them because they're going to annoy you. And so you've got to start with getting self-reflective about yourself, taking some time to slow things down and get curious. And so you really have to allow each other to be imperfect by holding space for the healing of both of your guys' insecurities. And you cannot belittle someone into healing. You can't pick them apart, find all their flaws and defects, and be negative and expect them to heal in that environment. You absolutely cannot create a negative narrative about them in your mind and then expect goodness from them. You can't. That doesn't work. So if you or your partner are doing that, where they're creating a negative narrative and you see it, it spills out in the words they say about you, the assumptions they make about you, the things they say you said or thought or did that aren't even close to anything that you said. That's a big red flag. So when you notice those things, you've got to be strong enough in yourself to step away and say, okay, I love these things about this person, these qualities that make them a unique pairing that I feel good about. And I also know these other things over here, the lack of curiosity, the lack of being able to repair, the lack of empathy toward me or my feelings or my views, the lack of curiosity is really at the heart of all of those things. If they don't have that, I can't fix that in them. And the reason I can't fix it is because these are things inside of them, in their subconscious programming, in their protective functions, things that they're automatic. These are their go-to things. And so you're fighting against a deeply programmed system in the other person. And that's why this is such a green flag when it's there, because we all have this deeply programmed narrative or system that protects us inside of ourselves. So if someone willingly steps out of their protective system, knowing they are fighting against that protective system to be there for you, to hold space for you, and to break the pattern of how they're used to behaving, that's a huge green flag. That's, I'm not perfect, but I'm willing to meet you where you need me to meet you. I'm willing to step into this. Someone who isn't normally willing to tell you that they miss you, that they can't wait to see you, knowing that you need the reassurance, fights against their own internal programming and says it anyway, because they know That's what my partner needs from me. And I'm not going to let that scary feeling inside of me or that shut down or that numbing out, whatever that is I do, stop me. And they're going to fight against that and step into that. And so that's a really big green flag. But the thing you can do for yourself is remind yourself that you're being curious in the process of getting to know someone. You're gathering data, you're getting info. And the more time that you see people and the more situations you see them in, you get a more well-rounded view of who they are. No one is black and white or always one way or always another way. And you have to get honest about what's going on inside of you that needs to be addressed, that is pushing away maybe in areas where you actually need to hold space. And if you'd like some clarity on that, don't hesitate to set up that consultation call, because you and I can get to the heart of what's going on and create a strategic custom plan for you. But what you can do for yourself is start getting curious. Start getting curious about what's going on inside of you, and start getting curious about what someone else has going on inside of themselves, and be honest with yourself about what you're seeing. Because if curiosity, empathy, patience, willingness to hold space is not there, then you're not going to heal in this relationship. You're going to get more damage. And our relationships can either be a huge catalyst for healing, or they can be one of those things that absolutely destroys us, rips us apart, or makes us dig into our ways even more. And that's definitely not the direction you want to go, especially if you're here watching this video. So I hope that was helpful. I hope it gave you a little more clarity on those things that actually matter, because the whole process of connecting to another human being can be so confusing. And so you can even translate that into how you are with friends and what makes a good friend. It's their willingness to allow you to be yourself, to be curious, to be open, to be honest, but with kindness and empathy. That's what makes a good friend, and that's what makes a great partner. So until next time, I hope you curate a life by your own design.